welcome and thank you very much for your time.
Absolute pleasure indeed.
I just wanted to, if I may, just read a little bit of a bio about you. You can tell me whether it's accurate or not, but for people that perhaps aren't familiar with you, it says here that you've got 30 years experience in senior management, project management and administration, both public and private sectors. Yeah. Former executive chairman of the A-League, or A-League clubs, Western Sydney Wanderers Football Club, and you're also the head of the A-League competition.
Correct. Yeah.
As well as chairman of Central Coast Mariners.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, very good. And right now, I believe you are firstly Group CEO, Cronulla Sharks.
Correct, yes.
Director Cricket New South Wales, Chairman University of Western Sydney.
Well, not Western Sydney University. We have a centre for research out there, an advisory board that I had the privilege of chairing for a while, yes.
Okay, and Chairman Sydney Thunder Advisory Board?
Well, similarly, that's been an advisory board. Now that the Thunder have done so well, it's probably time for that one to lapse, but certainly was an integral part of the growth of Sydney Thunder, yes.
Excellent. And New South Wales Government appointed Director to the Paramasala International Contemporary Arts Festival Board.
Yes, a wonderful multicultural event out in Parramatta. It sort of celebrates the uniqueness and the heritage of many cultures out there. A lot around the Indian culture, but many others as well. It's a really exciting festival and a great way to showcase the rich diversity we have in our country.
Great. And mentoring emerging business leaders?
Yes, yeah, I really enjoy change management and cultural transformation and so on, and sharing some thoughts with others about how that might be achieved in one way or another.
Okay. And public speaking, leadership, building a winning culture, high performance, brand development, fan engagement.
Yeah, and again, I love doing that sort of work. I love sort of giving and just sharing the benefit, a little bit of experience, and if it tweaks a thought in someone's head, it's worthwhile.
Okay. And Sports Connect ambassador.
Yeah, so Sports Connect is a part of the Trans-Tasman Business Circle, and it's got a few ambassadors who try to put some profile around the impact that sport can make, not just on business, but in government and, of course, communities and the hearts and souls of mums and dads and boys and girls. So it's a great organisation.
Fantastic. All right, so they got it right.
Oh, you did pretty well. I think you might have missed New South Wales Business Chamber in there somewhere, which is another one which I really enjoy, and that's really getting into the real deep thinking about advocacy and business transformation and looking after small business and just how we can collectively do things better to create a greater Australia.
Okay, great. All right, so just to frame up why we're talking, this is about talking to people who've done really good things, great things in the organisational change field. And I couldn't think of anybody better to talk to than yourself. And if I just go back a couple of years, appointed 25th November 2014 to the job here, and that year wasn't a great year for the Sharks. Hadn't been a couple of not so great years for the Sharks. But fast forward 2 more years, and things have changed dramatically. And first premiership ever. After having gotten the wooden spoon in 2014. So that's an amazing turnaround. And just walking into the club today, great vibe in the place. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that if we can share it with the world.
Absolutely, of course we can. Yeah, I'll be pleased to share it.
Okay.
I mean, it was an interesting time for the club. It was certainly probably at the lowest ebb it had been for a long, long time. A lot of negative brand equity. I think it had lost its zest, its swagger. It had forgotten how to walk tall, forgotten what a great club it had been and what a great club it could be on the back of some pretty solid negative publicity around things that occurred in the previous couple of years prior to that. And probably going back even further into some of the riots that occurred in Cronulla way back, and that other show, that Sylvania Waters, that had sort of painted a relatively negative image about one of the most remarkable environments in Australia and one of the greatest group of communities in Australia. And I think a lot of that had been lost. This iconic brand called the Cronulla Sharks, which is sort of the one that's the voice, if you like, on the national stage, had been hurt and wounded and it needed repair. And I had a few choices at the time to go into many roles, many great roles, probably some that people would have perceived to be a lot easier than this one. But I had very clear criteria about what would take me into a new role, having finished at the Wanderers in the June of that year. And I really need to believe in the opportunity, the potential of the organisation. It needed to excite, stretch and challenge me. Well, this role as Group CEO has multiple hats, and we have many business pillars here. Yeah. We own our own stadium. We're involved in a joint venture partnership with a major property development. We have our footy team, of course, this licensed club which we're in, which is one of the icons of the region. And since then we built our own foundation. So there was a lot of excitement, stretch and challenge there, having come from just running football clubs at the Wanderers and the Mariners, for example. Having been head of the A-League as well, I guess it heightened my appetite for professional sport and the impact it can make on communities, particularly on communities. So it needed the belief again, the excite, stretch and challenge was the opportunity for significant quantum growth, not just small growth, but the opportunity to really move the needle from a certain base to a lot higher base, which I think was clearly evident. The legacy component, what can we look back in 5 or 10 years' time as a community and say, look at the difference we've made to our club, our game and the community at large. And then the fifth one was alignment with the board about direction and the values and culture that I felt were really important in shaping our future.
So just on that, the values and culture, what were you looking to change?
Well, I wasn't really looking to change anything. I was looking to be the facilitator for change, if you like, and I think that's how great organisations actually move forward. The first thing we had to recognise was that people have been building our club for 50 years. This year's our 50th birthday, so back then it was 48 years they've been building our club, and there was a rich history, a rich pride, a rich heritage. I said that at the time, we stand on the shoulders of our pioneers. Our opportunities to really harness and embrace the great stuff that's happened in the evolution of our club's history. To learn from the stuff that wasn't so grand, and to then draw a line on it, draw a curtain, if you like, on the past, and say, well, let's take that really good stuff and move forward with that. But I talk about the 3 C's, like the sort of communication, collaboration, and connectivity sort of framework, if you like, of empowering and enabling all the stakeholders who've been involved with our club, whether it was previous members, sponsors, players, government, the community at large, junior league and so on, and really listening to them and understanding in their eyes and in their mind, if we're going to build a truly great club here, what would it stand for? How would it live on a day-to-day basis? How would it bring itself to life? What would its brand represent that would make you proud, whether it wins premierships or not? So we went through this whole lot of series of town hall forums where we actually just went and I listened and asked some questions and really wanted to listen. I had the chairman with me and the head coach with me, and just really listen and listen hard. And then a part of that journey, of course, was not just to listen, but to see how we could frame that and then to deliver it back to the community at large. And that was the journey we started the week after the 25th, and we started that straight away. And a couple of pizzas and a few beers and schnitzels, and in a few different arenas across the Shire, we went on a good listening. People often love a good listening to, and I think that's the fundamental starting point for me in reshaping culture and organisations.
And I imagine that wouldn't have been very easy talking to the fans of the football team at that point in time.
No, look, there was a fair amount of pent-up energy, I've got to say, and there was a fair amount of venting that needed to occur. I think people needed to really have an opportunity to vent and share their feelings about where the club had been and where it had been at. But all I knew was when people vented, that they truly cared, and that was what a wonderful starting point. When people actually express that sort of emotion, you know that their heart and soul is actually embedded in their club. You've got to hurt, you've got to love, and I know they loved, and it was a matter of perhaps just trying to reshape and redirect the boat a little bit to re-engage that love.
So what would you consider were the key elements of your change, your facilitating of that change?
I've always been driven by a Mark Twain statement that I think applies to both people and to organisations, and that is the greatest day in a person or read organisation's life is the day it was brought to existence, but then the day they understand why. And I felt that, and I still feel that a lot of businesses today are very driven around the what they do and not what I call the 2 bookends, the how and the why. The how being that cultural and values framework that forms your decision making. What sort of player might you recruit? What sort of coach? What sort of board member? What sort of staff member? What sort of corporate partner? And those sort of things. So really framing that cultural and values identity was really, really important. But then the why, why do we exist? I mean, do we really just exist to be a footy club? Or is does the world of professional sport offer so much more in the context of the incredible reach it has? We sometimes reach 1 million viewers a game when we play. This particular sport on the eastern seaboard dominates our media nearly 10, 11 months of the year. So we have this incredible capacity to harness the hearts and minds and passion of government, of business, of mums and dads, of boys and girls and communities. And so what's the reason and if you look at our vision statement, the last 2 lines are to be loved and embraced for the contribution and difference we make to our community. We want to be one of Australia's leading sporting lifestyle and entertainment organisations, loved and embraced for the contribution and difference we make to our community. You don't actually hear the word football in there. So once we had that real point of difference, that why, the understanding of how we can harness that in the what we do, and the cultural and values framework at the other end, we had this linear sort of equation that would let us go forward with strength and momentum.
So the vision you mentioned there, the vision statement you mentioned, was that new? Did you?
No, very new.
That?
No, very new indeed. Again, I'd learnt a long time ago the power of sport. The hope it gives to communities, the sense of unity, the sense of purpose. But its obligation and accountability is not just to put 17 footballers every week on a rugby league field or a soccer field or a cricket field or whatever. But its obligation and accountability and its true responsibility and indeed power in inverted commas is to understand and enable the impact it can have on communities for the greater good. And we needed to really revisit that. And I think that applies to all organisations, not just sport, by the way. I think that organisations who truly get the gift they've got of being able to shape communities and make a difference are the most powerful organisations.
Okay, and if I was to interview the staff here at the club, what would they say has been the difference from 2 years ago and now?
Oh, look, those that are still here would be incredibly excited, incredibly passionate, incredibly driven by belief. I can't get them to have a day off. For example, we've got a buy coming up, or there's a representative round in 2 weeks' time. I've actually given them 2 options. They can either take the Friday or the Monday off and have a long weekend. I don't want to see a leave for them, but just go have a break, guys, because they're incredibly dedicated to the task at hand and really excited about where we are. We're not on the ropes anymore. We're actually right in the centre of the ring, and our opportunity right now is to raise the bar. The base of the pyramid the foundations are really strong. So in every part of our business now, we're looking forward strategically. There's no more skeletons, and that's our true opportunity. But and why I started that answer with those who are still here. We had to make some tough decisions early once we framed who we were, what we stood for, and where we were going. And we had to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. And some people weren't ready for that journey. Not bad people, but weren't ready for that journey. And we needed to move a few on and bring in a skill set that was really capable of delivering what we needed to deliver. I said at the very beginning in those forums that I'd sort of had a fair amount of success in other forums and was being a little bit deified, embarrassingly deified. And I sort of said, if you think it's all about me, we're in deep bother, guys, but together we can create something really special. I think that's been our mantra all the way along ever since then. The sense of togetherness and unity can really work to produce some of the results we've seen on and off the field.
Great. And what about the difficult stakeholders to this? Those who may have had influence but weren't necessarily positive?
Well, as I said, you've got to embrace the past, and there were some previous people who had served the club in one form or another, on or off the field, who felt they'd lost their connectivity with the club. But what you knew deep down, even if they were difficult, as I said a moment ago, they still cared. So we've really worked really hard at embracing that past and recognising that it did exist. We didn't come in here knights on white horses, pretending we owned the world or the club was ours, or the old cliche that we've got to leave it better for us having been here. And the reciprocal version for me and our staff is we've got to make sure that you're better for having been here as well. So it was about engagement. They go back to those C's of communication. We did lots of communication. We changed the way we totally liaise with our members. The game day experience, how we mixed with our corporate sponsors who were disenfranchised. So we totally changed the way we relate to them, to government. And then that connectivity and collaboration. How do we build this together? How can you play a role in building the club that I know you want deep down, or the business or the organisation you want deep down. And I know you've been wounded, but how can you be a part of this journey and make a meaningful contribution? And I've always found in business that will work more times than not in a manipulative way, but in a collegial, collaborative, connectivity way.
And of course we know the Sharks won their first premiership last year. That can be taken as a measure of success. What else do you use to measure success?
Oh, look, there's so many measurements I think that's really important to us on and off the field. Go back to our vision statement. If it's going to be the identifier of success, that whole notion of contribution and making a difference. I've had a fellow with me for 11 years now who just understands communities and how you deliver that be that catalyst, if you like, for positive social impact and change. And with the amount of work we've done in our community across a range of our programs around domestic violence and anti-bullying and diversity and inclusivity, Indigenous, we've been recognised as having the most advanced RAP program in the country at the moment in terms of sport. So we've done a massive amount of work in that contribution and making a difference to our community. I think is really important. Clearly, some of the work we're doing with our property, you would have seen that there's significant expansion in our business world at the moment. So business is an important part of what we do. Our licensed facility is growing, and I guess if you measured member satisfaction, we're number one last year across the league for game day experience, for member experience, for digital enhancement. Our staff are bouncy and bubbling. There are so many measurements that make us more than just a football club, if you like. And while winning the premiership was a wonderful thing for the club on the back of 50 years of evolution to experience, as I said to them a week or two later, great, let's celebrate and really enjoy this moment. If you're satisfied, we're on the wrong bus, because our future's ahead of us, not behind us.
And what do you think the correlation is between leadership and culture?
Well, I think it's massive, and I think the people often debate where it starts from. It starts from the top, does it or not? I don't know. I think that the facilitation of cultural transformation, if you come back to the model I talked to you about, the 3 C's of communication, collaboration and connectivity, is one of enablement and empowerment. So you want to see that culture flowing all around the ball, if you like, if you want to see us as a ball. So coming up and down. My role is to always be positive, always to lead, create an environment where it's safe to contribute. It doesn't matter what your contribution is, but to be, and I see that as a really important part of a leader, to understand the aspirations of your staff. I really believe that organisations grow at their best when the people within it are growing. So we have a very clear pathway for our staff here. We understand exactly what drives them, why they're here, what's their how and why, not just the what they do. They might be the head of brand or communications, but what's sitting behind that from their cultures and values perspective and their reason why. So that we try to marry those two, so at the end there's a confluence at the top of the pyramid where they're both working together. So I think a leader in that context is a great facilitator of those things. And obviously you can never not walk the talk as well. My role I see very much as guiding that and encouraging it to come to the top and rewarding it and recognising it in a high performance environment.
Okay. And just lastly, what advice would you give others, leaders and managers around in organisations tasked with the job of affecting or facilitating change?
Well, as I said, I think there are some fundamental principles there. I think a really good starting point is a good listening to. You've often seen leaders come in and be perhaps a little bit too rushed to the altar to create change. I think change can evolve and create itself if you can facilitate that process. A good listening to is a really important start for me. An absolute appreciation of history in the past, I think, is really important. What has it taught us? What are the strengths? What are the pillars it's put in place to get us to where we are today? What can we learn from that? What can we enhance? That clarification to me around the core principles, the how, the why and the what. So the values and cultural framework at one end, the purpose, the why do we exist, that Mark Twain sort of why do we exist, what's our purpose, what are we here for? And then that what we do sort of frames itself in the middle of that and evolves consistent with those sort of things. So I always use the communication, the connectivity and the collaboration. Change comes about by working together, by enabling and empowering others, by bringing them into the tent and making them feel a part of that journey and process.
Lyall Gorman, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. That's a great change story.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.